3,000. History with an exclamation.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied. Yankees are champions of baseball.
All right. Well, we are less than 24 hours away. Actually, as I'm recording, I got to get to freaking bed, but I'm so amped up. I'm so excited. I wanted to talk a little Knicks. But yeah, we are less than 24 hours away before the Knicks will be tipping off against the Cleveland Cavaliers, 7 p.m. technically tonight at Madison Square Garden. I'm very excited for this game. It's the opening night. The NBA actually kicked off tonight. I didn't get to watch the two games, but I heard the Thunder game went to overtime. I don't think the other one's currently finishing up. But we're going to talk Knicks, man, because it's been, I don't know, a couple of weeks since we last spoke on the Knicks. And now we actually have some real basketball to talk about, again, in less than 24 hours. But the Knicks start their season after an offseason where I think most people were expecting a change at head coach and not expecting a ton of roster turnover. And that's exactly both what we got. You know, Mike Brown comes in, Tom Thibodeau goes out. He's now an op. You know, he's out there showing the Celtics the entire playbook and showing them film. So that's nice. Thanks, Tom. I loved you here. And the Knicks bring in a couple of new pieces, and they're going to try to work this thing out with Mike Brown now, and hopefully win a championship this year. This is kind of the first year where it's, at least by a lot of Knicks fans, are looking at it as finals or bust in terms of just did they have a successful season. I don't think, like, listen, if the Knicks go out there and they don't win a title this year, the whole thing's not a failure. They don't need to rethink how they're approaching this because their window is still technically open. They've still got Brunson under contract for a couple of more. Towns, they've still got guys under contract. So the window still technically has, it's getting smaller, but a couple more years. But yeah, this is the first year where you're like, well, you know, you had the excuse even last year of you made that big trade for Towns last minute, and all of a sudden your roster's completely different. This year, you're kind of looking at it like, well, yeah, you have a new head coach, but this is the same roster basically you had last year. The rotation is going to be slightly different in the back end, but you have now been a contender for this entire 2020 decade now. Now you're expected, 5-6 years into this being competitive to actually make some headlines here, because Lord knows no other New York team really has a chance right now. The Yankees just got booted out of the first round. The Giants are a laughingstock, and they just made history in the worst way possible. The New York Jets are making history every single week in the worst way possible. I don't think the New York Rangers are very good. And the other New York sports teams I don't follow. So the Knicks, I think, have the best chance to win a championship. But they are starting their season banged up a bit, I guess you could say. Both Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart will be missing time to start this season. I don't know how much time. Hopefully it's just opening night for each of them. But it seems like Mitchell Robinson, they're going to try and load manage that ankle. It's a bit concerning because it is the same ankle that Mitch got surgery on just a couple years ago, and had to come back from last year. They could also just be playing it very safe because they know Mitchell Robinson is very fragile and they want him for a playoff run. And I think everybody's hopes are that Mitch plays 60-plus games this year and he's ready for the postseason. I don't think anybody is ever going to expect him to be more than a part-time player as long as he's here for the playoff run, right? It's kind of like how Yankees fans think of Giancarlo Stanton every year. Except he didn't show up this time. But you're probably going to see, I'm going to say you're going to see Ariel Huckporty tomorrow night. I just got a gut feeling Mike Brown's leaning towards defense early on here with the lineups at least. And we'll talk more on the Huckporty, or we'll talk more on the starting lineup stuff later. But Mitch is out. And then Josh Hart. Back spasms for him. Hopefully it's not too long before we see him. Now the good, I don't want to say good, but a positive spin you could put on these two injuries in particular are that these are your two non-spacers. So the Knicks do have an opportunity here to get some really long looks at what this team looks like in a 5-out formation, right? But, we've talked a lot already here in the early on about this new offense and what Mike Brown is trying to put into the system here. We've talked about it here on the show. Knicks players were talking about it yesterday, and here's what Karl Anthony Towns had to say about it.
What do you see as the potential for you in this new offense? I mean, this offense unlocks different areas of your game that maybe weren't on display last year, or how do you see yourself in this new offense kind of being able to showcase your game?
Honestly, I don't know. But we figuring it out. I said, but honestly, I just don't know.
Do you think the speed or anything lends itself to you being able to maybe do different things that you weren't doing?
It's just different. It's different. So we still figuring it out.
So those were Towns' comments yesterday when he was talking to the New York beat reporters on how he's adjusting to this offense. I'm not an expert in reading body language or any type of body language. You don't have to be an expert to just the words he was speaking to. Obviously, it's going to take time, right? I think I'm not trying to read too much into that there. I think people are overreacting a little bit. I think that's always been Towns' personality, and I also don't think he said anything shocking. Again, nobody should expect the Knicks, who played underneath Tom Thibodeau for, 6 years, playing, late clock offense. All of a sudden, now they're switching to this Princeton-style offense. No one expects that to go from slow to fast like that to be this quick and seamless. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take weeks. It might even take months before you see the Knicks at their best. They're going to have to adjust. Towns is not used to playing this way. He's going to have to be used more as a playmaking hub on the elbows. It's a more three-point heavy attack. He's not used to that. Even Jalen Brunson, right? Jalen Brunson is a slower, more methodical point guard who's not used to that quicker system, and he's not used to being off the ball. He's on the ball a ton, and he's still going to be on the ball a ton, but he will be more off ball in this system than we used to see him. He used to be it used to be the opposite under Tom Thibodeau. How many times do the Knicks get a shot off 7 seconds or less? You're going to see a lot of offense before that clock hits 15 now. It's going to be double. or cut in half. So they got to get used to it. That's the only thing I have to say is it's going to take time to get used to it, much like last year, how it took time for the personnel to gel. This time it's going to take time for that personnel to learn this new system. It's intricate. It's not as simple as Tom Thibodeau's offense was, and Tom Thibodeau did have an offense, contrary to popular belief, but Mike Brown's offense is much more layered, and they're just going to have to get reps and hopefully nail this thing down. But it's a new look. It's there's a lot of pace, a lot of motion, cutting, a lot of handoffs, and it's pass heavy and 3-point centric. In the preseason, okay, for what it's worth, the Knicks were 31st in pace somehow. I guess that's because there were some international teams playing. So they were, dead last in pace, basically. But a lot of that, they didn't play a ton of their regulars. They played a couple of games in Abu Dhabi. A lot of pace has to do with shot making, which they didn't make a ton of shots. A lot of it has to do with defense. Half of pace is defense. So I'm not looking too deep into that. They were 10th in 3-point attempts per game, with 44. For context, last regular season, that was an issue. The Knicks were 27th in 3-point attempts per game. They averaged 10 less than that at 34 attempts per game. So that's something you hope carries over. Obviously, a big discussion in that game right before Charlotte was Mike Brown talking post-game how there wasn't a ton of play calling going on. And really over the course of the preseason, outside of that game in Charlotte, there wasn't a lot of play calling. And we'll talk more on that stuff later, but I think the Knicks are setting up their half-court offense a lot better. From watching those couple of preseason games that we did, you saw a lot of, and it was usually Brunson bringing the ball up the right side of the court so he can get to his left downhill. And then he had a trailer next to him or behind him in, let's say Mikal Bridges to receive the pitch. I think that's what you're going to see a lot of, kind of just pitch series offense. This way, you have that set up with your corner spacer. You go to the other side of the floor, you got double gap spacing on the second side with no help or loading. You don't have the help defense ready to stop you there. Now the defense in this setup, they have to decide whether or not to switch the action. If they switch it, okay, Brunson keeps and he goes to work. If the trailer gets it, well, he can drive right, or he goes back to Brunson, who calls for a screen to get the big and two-man action. Right? This right there is how the Knicks are going to get their 3-point looks, off of kickouts from the top of those sets. Last season, they didn't have that. That wasn't a thing. Every single defense they played, outside of, very few, they switched the Brunson Towns pick and roll. And the Knicks had trouble with it. The Knicks took a ton of time to exploit the switch. I just spit. It was a Brunson isolation, just matchup hunting. The cat post-ups, they were slow. They were predictable. They were very easy to load up help on and make pre-rotations on. So that, I think, is going to change. Now, to be clear, the Knicks will still see this type of defense when Towns is at the 4. They're just going to throw those switchable wings on them. But now the Knicks are interacting more within their actions to avoid this type of stuff. They're going to force the defense to make quicker decisions this way, right? It's more of a true read and react offense. People talk about the no play calling stuff. I think you need to relax about that because a lot of it is just a casual fan not really knowing the intricacies. React is what this is. It's an offense that's based on how the defenders and how the ball handler plays. There are built-in automatic sets inside of this offense. It's the modern way, where the old school way, you would have a head coach making play calls, and that takes seconds off the clock. The new school, more modern way says, let's not waste time, right? Let's use less clock and let's just read the defense and react to it. And so I think it's more of a heavy emphasis on flow, which is good. Now, I still do want to see the Knicks run some actions, and they will, because I think it's going to benefit with the personnel they have. I think getting Brunson, again, off the ball in these floppy actions where he's coming up from underneath the basket, elevator plays, coming off pin downs, etc. I'm curious to see how Mikal Bridges looks under this head coach, right? He's a guy who thrives in movement, cutting, relocating. Mike Brown's going to be a lot better for him, I think, than Tom Thibodeau on both ends. And the Towns and Mitch stuff, right? Playing Towns at the 4 doesn't get a ton of looks when he plays at the 4, but there are ways to make it work using Mitchell Robinson as a screener, a 4-5 pick and roll. Run your horns actions at the top, like you did with Cat when he was with Minnesota playing next to Gobert, right? Pinning screens, step-up screens. Those are ways to get Towns those reps. Mike Brown's offense is very centered around two-man actions in space. Okay, wheel actions where the wings will space and the corners cut up to the wing. It's not just basic, 45 cuts from the wing. It's corner DHO, standard handoffs, but weave actions in the slot. When you're running 4 out, 5 in, or 4 out, 1 in, you'll have those weave plays. 5 out offense as well. That's where the offense works best under Mike Brown is when you're in 5 out spacing. The Brunson Towns pick and roll. Get actions, right? Just pace in early offense. And listen, because that all said, it sounds like it's perfect, like in theory, but not only is it hard to learn, I don't know really what to expect yet of it, just because of how the Knicks are going about it. I don't think just because the personnel is what it is, I don't think this offense is ever going to be super, super fast and fully equal opportunity. And I don't think you're going to see some extreme 3-point attempts, to a degree where it's like, whoa, the Knicks shot, 60.63s a game this year. Like, I don't think it's going to be this perfect offense that everybody's drawing up. I think it could be very good. But just because of what the personnel is, again, Brunson's a slower, methodical point guard, and Towns has always been hesitant to shoot threes in volume. Whether or not he has the wing or big on him, doesn't matter. It's just always who he's been. He prefers to play more like Kevin Durant. But the way that Brown is approaching this is he wants defense in the starting lineup. I don't love the idea of Mitch at the 5 and Towns at the 4 because forget the Towns stuff. Mitch Robinson is not, who do you coach? Domantas Sabonis. Mitch is not Sabonis, who Mike Brown coached with this same style of offense. And I know the starting lineup, is not going to be as impactful for Brown as it was with Tibbs because Mike Brown is more willing to mix and match and go deeper to 10-man in the rotation. But still, I worry about Mitchell Robinson's quickness and his hustle to get up to the level to screen because he's not always quick to come up top. He can't make those same reads as an elbow hub. He's not the same playmaker that Sabonis is. He's not a playmaker, period. You've seen what Mitchell Robinson could look like when he's got the ball in his hands, outside of a couple of rare instances where we see him attack and put the ball on the floor and throw down a friggin' windmill or some shit. He'll surprise you with that every once in a blue moon, but he's not a playmaker, and you got Towns at the 5 with Deuce in that lineup, and we see the potential that's got. That might just be the way to unlock it all. And I understand that Mike Brown wants defense, and that's what he's thinking behind starting Mitchell Robinson. And again, it's probably going to be Huck Porty tomorrow night. But you just think about, you go back to the beginning of last preseason, the Knicks traded for that big, substantial Towns contract. They then fired a successful head coach in Tom Thibodeau, and they hired Mike Brown, who was out of a job for a year or two, all in part because they want to optimize Towns as a 5. That is this whole point. The whole point of this entire thing is to get Towns at his best. And Towns at his best, there's not a single person who would disagree, is as a 5. So it's tough just looking at it because you're choosing between what's more important. A horrid defense with Towns at the 5, but unimaginable elite offense, or solid offense with Towns at the 4 with maybe solid team defense. So you don't got to ask me. I've been singing this song since the beginning of last season when we got Towns. Offense wins championships, right? So that's where I stand. You know what I want to see more of. But it seems like Mike Brown, at least to start this season, is going to try to balance it out. Again, you're going to see more 5 out, but he's going to try to lean on defense, at least to start games. And we've watched the Knicks play defense through the preseason, and there seems to be a pattern here. And I think this is probably what you're going to see in the regular season. And it's a more modern defensive approach. But the Knicks are bringing a ton of early help in the gaps. There's some switching at the point of attack, and they're relying on hard closeouts off the help that they bring. So it's exactly how they defeated the Celtics in the postseason last year. I'll say that one more time because New York teams love to beat Boston in the playoffs now. I love that. It's exactly how the Knicks defeated the Celtics in the playoffs last year, right? When the Knicks got a switch, whether it was Brunson or Cat, they lived with it because they were loading up help in the lane to shut off the dribble drive, and then they'd force tough three-point looks off the closeouts. So that's their plan here. And I think it's the perfect plan to get the best of Wingstop, right? I think OG Anunoby is excellent in that help role. I think Mikal Bridges is much better in this help role that he might be in more, as opposed to him playing the point of attack and Karl Towns being in drop. That is the worst formula you want, right? We saw what that did last year. It was a mess. I think having Mikal in help, he's long, he's rangy, he's athletic enough to make the long closeout, and he had his best defensive seasons when he was with Phoenix in that help defender role. I think that's the way. Have your wings in help, and when you can, Mikal off the point of attack. But the problem with this scheme, it comes with when you run into offenses like the Cleveland Cavs. You play the Cavs tomorrow night. When you run into an offense like them, they play a certain way that challenges defenses that help in the gaps. The Cavs, you're going to see a ton of wheel actions. Movement off of the slot to neutralize closeouts. when you're playing a defense that the Knicks plan to play, and you're bringing early help like that in the driving lanes, and all of a sudden you're closing out and no one's there because that guy moved over, it can throw you off completely. So it's an offense that really can play to the Knicks' defensive weaknesses here. So I want to see how that plays out tomorrow night, especially without Mitchell Robinson. Now, Huck Porty is more of a defensive-minded big, but he's not Mitchell Robinson at all. But we'll see. We don't even know who's going to get the start yet. We'll see tomorrow some of what it looks like. I want to wrap this up in a few minutes, but I do want to lastly talk about the second unit, because we haven't really talked about some of the new guys on this roster in this rotation, and we'll do that in just a second. Going to head to a quick break. Stay with us. Be right back.
Quick break here, guys. Stay connected with BD4 on social media. Follow us on Instagram and X at BD4Pod, and find us on Facebook by searching BD4. Don't miss out. Join the conversation. Want more BD4? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share with your fellow fans. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. Love BD4 but don't have the time to sit down and watch? Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and keeps the conversation going.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to episode 913 of the podcast as the Knicks prep for opening night at MSG. The first unit, we talk a lot about the potential of it, especially with who gets that last starting spot. Is it Deuce at the 2, Mitch at the 5? It's going to be Mitch at the 5 once he's healthy. The second unit is interesting. This used to be a major strength for the Knicks last couple of seasons, especially with Josh Hart changing roles, turned into more of a weakness. This year, it's interesting because it's now very elite for a second unit when you look at the 6th and 7th man that the Knicks have in Deuce and Hart. But it gets pretty tricky after that. You're selecting between 5 guys, going to choose a couple of them, right, who've got strengths, but also different types of flaws. Jordan Clarkson, when Jordan Clarkson is right, he can be a very good playmaker off the dribble. He gets paint touches better than most guards can. He can read the help when he gets into the paint and get the ball to the second side, hit the weak side corner, right? Kind of the complete opposite in terms of play style of Deuce McBride, who's more of an off-ball wing, right? More of a 2-3 guy as opposed to a true backup point. Jordan Clarkson is that. He can knock down open three-point looks, and he can make plays off the dribble. He's also Jordan Clarkson, right? He can be very erratic. I can see him being a figure on this team that could be scapegoated at times when things aren't going well. Can be very controversial. He's also older. He's never been the most athletic player. So we'll see how that experience goes. I don't think there will be an in-between. There's always one guy, right? Ariel Huck-Porty, who, again, I do expect to see tomorrow. I liked what I saw from him last year. I think he's a good rim runner. I think there are some good things offensively. I think he can make some simple reads. Can make the simple reads. Can get to his floater. He's got a decent touch. And he's a good drop big. He's a good drop big. We saw some hedging from him last year where he looked pretty good at the perimeter. But he's not always in the right place defensively. He's still got to work on positioning. And he can't do a ton in terms of stretching the floor offensively. He's not a shooter. So We'll see how much of a role he has when/if the Knicks ever do get healthy. Knock on wood. Landry Shamet is back. I didn't expect Landry Shamet to return. He did kind of find a nice little rhythm for himself late in the season. Turned it on, but you went through the usual ups and downs with him. I don't know how I really feel about him being back on the team. The shot mechanics are interesting with me. I know he had the shoulder injury a few years back. That's kind of impacted his shooting. It's been up and down. He's a feisty little defender. We'll see with him. I'd much rather have Tyler Kolek get some minutes. This is a kid who I think is an elite passer. He's a true backup point guard in terms of skill. I think he's got the passing wits. I think he can make basic level reads and command an offense in the half court. But he's also very small and he's unathletic. And I don't know that he has enough scoring touch to last. He does have a nice form on his spot up jumper, but we've yet to see that fall consistently yet. And then there's someone like Yabu coming over from Philly. Interesting fit. He can play the 5 alongside Towns, which can force the defense to do some switching and can shoot a little bit. He's also very big, very heavy for someone who's more of a true 4. He's pretty heavy. I think he's pushing 300. I really do. I don't know what the official weight is, but he doesn't move very well. Defensively, that's noticeable. Watched him in the preseason. Defensively, just breaking down a lot. Not a lot of communication. So I don't know how much playing time he'll get, but those are the 5 guys or so there that you'll see. Maybe all get some burn early on here, but once this rotation solidifies to 9 or 10, which is what Mike Brown plans to do, hallelujah, we'll see who really earns their spot. But I'm excited, man. I'm super excited for this Knicks team. If I were to guess, if you want to play some fun prediction games, how far they can go this year, the Eastern Conference is a lot weaker than where it was last year. And it wasn't that strong last year, right? But the Boston Celtics are going to be without Tatum. The Indiana Pacers are going to be without Halliburton. You still got some tough competition. Cleveland's going to be really good. Orlando's still there. We'll see what happens with the Bucks. The whole Giannis situation, people are making a lot of noise about that. We'll see what happens there, but I think the Knicks can get the 1st or 2nd seed. I'm going to say 2nd seed just to play conservative. I think they can win. Last year they won 51 games. I think I'm going to say they win 51 again. I'll say 51 wins again. I think this time that gets them 2nd place in the East. And I think they can make a run to get to the finals. Let's have some fun. I'll say they jump to 2nd in the East. Yeah, 2nd in the East, and I think they can get to the NBA Finals this year. I think this time they win that 3rd round. As far as winning it, I don't know. Some of those teams in the West are tough. And you know what? On paper, right now, we're saying stuff, but shit always changes. Some team always comes out of nowhere, and we'll see. But yeah, nonetheless, I'm very excited for this Knicks team, and we're starting up in not too long from now. So I'm going to go to bed so I can actually get some sleep because it's late. And I'll see you guys after this first game. We will do recaps for the Knicks after every single game. So I'm looking forward to it. And I am really excited to get into the basketball season here as we transition officially now from baseball to basketball. Yanks in the past for now. We'll talk Yankees maybe a little later in the wintertime, but we are taking a break, cleansing from them, and we're all in on the orange and blue. The Knicks, of course. Go Knicks, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Appreciate you all for tuning in too. Later. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.